What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Digital World Acquisition Corp, ticker symbol DWAC, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Thursday, February 8th. Well, DWAC stock here today, finishing up just about 15 cents a share, 0.33%, a relatively flat day, at least considering the typical volatility of this stock. This is all part of the bigger picture bounce that we've been seeing recently, kind of up out of the hole as we make our way back toward a potential test of 50 bucks a share. Let's take a look though here. Here on the 1 minute chart, DWAC here, I was watching it, I had my eye on it, but as far as clean intraday scalp setups are concerned, for me, nothing here today on DWAC. If you guys want to get my personal scalp setup alerts every single trading day, we're trading every day in the Roensch Capital Gold server. You could also get swing trade setup alerts, human verified unusual options activity, verified by me, by the way, every day, and even platinum one-on-one coaching. That link is in the pinned comment. Let's take a look at the 5 minute and look at the volume here on the 5 minute to get a lot more context about today's volatility, even though we finished relatively flat. Now, if we take a look here, and just so you understand what we're looking for, I'm always looking for higher volume on really movement on any time frame, but here we're looking intraday at the 5 minute chart, right? I'm looking at volume on the intraday to be as high as possible on moves that confirm my bias, my sentiment, my positioning, and moves that go against my bias to be as low as possible volume. Okay, we're talking sample size here. Sample size of the market, if you're long DWAC, and all of a sudden it shoots up 8%, and you're seeing that happen on massive volume, and anytime it pulls back, it's happening on very little volume. Well, that's good. I mean, a huge portion or a huge sample size in the market is willing to not only pay more than you paid, at least pay more than what the stock price was previously, depending on what your basis is, but is also agreeing with you that the stock belongs higher. Okay, so looking at this on the 5 minute, if we look here, of course, big volume off the open, and actually these two red candles saw some pretty high volume, and then over here, we had this green candle that was kind of a topping tail sort of deal, having a little bit higher volume, and as far as actual, I think, substance that we can take out of the volume on the 5 minute chart today, I really think it would be kind of a force to sit here and try to interpret anything. There's really not a lot to take away from here, and that's not a positive or a negative. It's just a net neutral. It's just okay. That information is a bust here today. We'll look again tomorrow, kind of deal. All right. Now let's look at the 30 minute and start getting more contextual about the day to day, using these self-fulfilling prophecy indicators like the 50 period moving average, that white line, and the 200 period moving average, that gray line, which we look at really on the 30 minute, 4 hour, and daily to get psychological levels to keep an eye on as we move forward here into tomorrow. Now, clearly here on the 30 minute chart, this 50 period is incredibly relevant. I mean, right off the bat, from where the stock currently trades down to make a retest of that, it's just over 1%, just about a 1% move away. And we know that DWAC tends to be a relatively volatile name. So I'm watching that 50 period here on the 30 minute. Again, we're always watching multiple time frames, but I'm going to pay very close attention to that as we move forward here into tomorrow. If I'm looking at this from a bullish perspective, you're going to want that to hold. Okay, ideally you're going to want to see that hold as a support level, but if you're a bear, looking at the 30 minute, I think nothing would make you happier, more encouraged than a hard downside break of that 50 period on the 30 minute. That could potentially, I think a lot of bears in that case would be thinking a downside test of that 200 period down here at right around 42.10. But listen here, that's just the 30 minute. There are bigger things at play here. First, we have to take a look at the 4 hour. Okay, immediately relevant here on the 4 hour is again that 50 period. And if we look here, that 50 period is currently sitting right around 40 bucks a share. That's going to be approximately a 12.5% downside move to make a test of that. So from a bullish perspective, obviously, if we saw a retest of that, I'd want to see that hold as a support level. But really, from a bullish perspective, I don't want to have to go down and make a retest of that. I mean, it's 12.5% away, right? So ideally, I'd prefer to see that just get pulled upside as quickly as possible, get some feet up underneath the stock at the newer current levels around 45, if not 50 bucks a share. Okay. But if you're a bear, you like that gap, those big gaps where on, like, for example, specifically the 4 hour looks like DWAC is kind of trading on thin air. The bears salivate at those kind of gaps. Okay. You bears, you don't want that 50 period moving upside any more than it already is. And you want the stock fading down for a retest of that psychological level of that 50 period. Let's now take a look at the daily. This is arguably by far the most important chart. And listen, the 50-day, the 200-day, they're kind of irrelevant right now. The nearest one is the 50-day, and it's below 25 bucks a share. Okay? I'm thinking one thing on the daily chart. Whether you're a bull or a bear here on DWAC. What is it? I bet you can tell me. Listen, we know what DWAC can do in a day. We have to look at the context of the volatility of the stock. The stock currently is just above 45 bucks a share. Again, we know what this thing can do. 50 bucks a share is less than 10% away. Even just tomorrow, ideally from a bullish perspective, a test of 50 is what you want. You want a test of 50 and a reclaim of 50. And listen, you can't expect that to just take one day necessarily. But that's kind of what's in your mind. A more reasonable goal is to hold 45. Quite obviously. Avoiding a red day tomorrow would be a pretty, I think, a positive thing for bulls. Just hang out between that 45 to 50 channel, keep that option open for a test of 50, and ideally a reclaim and hold is going to be the number one thing, a hold of 50. Now, if you're a bear, if we see a retest of 50, you're already red, most likely in that case, right? Because it's nearly 10% away. But you don't want to see 50 reclaimed. By any means, do not reclaim 50 bucks a share. Okay? But really, more reasonably in the short term, you would love, if you're a bear, to see a fade back down beneath 45 bucks a share. That would be big for you. I think that would be encouraging to a lot of other bears and discouraging to quite a few bulls, at least in the very short term. Okay, so both perspectives here. Let's take a look now and get some bias from real traders in the options chain. What's the volume telling us today? Listen, the volume's low, 35,400 contracts traded today. You have to take it with a grain of salt. I don't care if it supports your bias. That doesn't mean you can just take it and run with it because it feels good. You have to take it with a grain of salt. But, the bias is massive today. And again, this could be one call buyer, believe it or not, coming in, buying 20,000 calls, throwing this off completely. But the reality is there were nearly 30,000 calls traded on DWAC today, 29,700. And there were 5,668 puts on the name today. Okay, this is leaning massively to the call side. Again, very small sample size, take it with a grain of salt, but that's the data. The short-term speculators, 0 to 20 delta, 6,784 calls, 2,336 puts. Very small sample size, but even the short-term speculators leaning relatively heavily to the bullish side. Look down here, deep in the money. Right, that 81 to 100, those higher quality contracts, the mid to longer term bets, 15,600 calls, one put, not 1,000 puts, one put. Okay, so you can see where this ratio and the overall call put ratio is coming from. Again, this is not opinion based. This is data. This is raw data. It's a very small sample size. Please take it with a grain of salt. Don't just take it and run with it, but that's what the bias is here in the chain today. Hey, listen, before you head out, if you get value out of these videos, please subscribe to the channel. It helps out tremendously in my ability to continue to make these on a daily basis. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.